Entrepreneurship, we're back again today. Following the conversation last week, it was fireworks. A lot of lessons were learned, a lot of issues were discussed. We started the process and discussing, where people start, how do people get to start, the challenges that people have met. We got to a point of even talking about failures, how people have failed, whether they consider them as failures or not. How do people balance the time to be an entrepreneur, run a business? At the same time, some are employed or running three, four different enterprises at the same time. Today, it's another picked, panel. Today, we are joined with Nadine, joining us from all the way from Port Elizabeth, hereby in South Africa. Um, we have with us Matt Delahaye, joining us all the way from the UK, London. And we have Ken Bumirak joining us from Calgary, Canada. And you all know me by now, Stanford. We are going to be engaging again and taking up and pushing towards this issue of entrepreneurship. We are a generation that needs to go entrepreneurs. Africa needs people to be entrepreneurs. We need to create jobs for ourselves. We need to create jobs for our economies and increase and grow our GDPs. Nadine, what do you do?
So, hello everyone. First of all, Stanford, thank you for this opportunity. I do appreciate it that you've given me a chance to be on your platform. Well, I am a brand, well, I run a brand consultancy business as well. I am a voiceover artist and a radio presenter and a student. So, yeah, I'm quite everywhere right now. So, I'm studying integrated project management as well. I've graduated in media and journalism as well as public relations.
How do you manage all these things? You're a DJ, you're a student, you're all these things. Are they all going well, or some are suffering?
I live for this ethos and the slogan in life: a flexible person is never bent out of shape.
Wow. Okay. That's
Very good.
that's a nice one. That's a good one, Matt.
Hey Stan, thanks as well for having me along. So yeah, I'm Matt, South African, currently living in London. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Employ. Employ is an online platform built for the new collar workforce, which is we're a platform that efficiently connects people looking for work to companies looking for staff and gives them tools to connect and communicate, particularly in sort of industries where workers don't yet have an online professional presence. So, we look at hospitality, retail, delivery driving, warehousing, this kind of thing. And we provide the tools to bring people together and help them to find jobs.
I remember speaking to you in 2014, 2015, and you're promising to bring Employee to South Africa. What happened? Where are we with that? Okay,
But
maybe we'll continue the conversation.
okay, we're on the way, but we can come back to this.
Okay, great stuff. Yeah, Ken.
I had to run and get a toothpick because being online kind of gets you a little nervous, but I'm really excited. Thank you for having me. Uh, One thing that I was going to say right off the bat is I don't climb trees and mountains. I'm afraid of heights. My name is Ken. I'm with Kenixworld Landscaping, Kenixworld Events, and Kenixworld Transportation. These are the lines of business that I've been operating for the past couple of years now. And I'm truly excited to be able to share where we started, where we are, where we plan to go into the future. I'm going to hand off back to you, Stan.
Great stuff. Thanks, Ken. And I see, Nadine, you are leading already. That statement is, making waves on social media. A flexible person is never bent out of shape. Exactly what does this entail to you? How do you apply this statement in your personal life?
So Stan, like with voiceovers, I sometimes have to do it in French. So I had to learn French as well. But in my career, I've actually worked in advertising, right? And I've worked in corporate for about over 8 years. And me branching off into my own company was in the basis of advertising. So what we did in advertising pertaining to branding specifically was below the line and above the line branding, which you find in advertising. So below the line branding is basically things like pull-up banners, telescopic flags, your merchandise, t-shirts that you wear, the pens, the notebooks, whatever. Above the line branding, you focus that as an advert or a radio ad, where you fork out the campaign money. You get celebrities to actually sponsor or actually be a brand ambassador. That's above the line branding. And that's what I've learned in advertising. And I saw a gap in the market that a lot of people can't define advertising and branding. What's the difference between brand management? What's brand equity? What's brand positioning? What's corporate identity? All these factors are not under the banner of advertising. And I've seen a need for that in the market where people want to advertise basically their ethos or their belief system or their internal governance, and they can't even communicate that with the logo. So how do you communicate an idea, a good idea, and you just put that into a Nike sign, for example? What does that mean? What does the Nike sign mean? Just do it, right? So people can't get the link between my idea and how do I let people know what my idea is. So I just get in there and help you understand and help you navigate from your inception to your manifestation of that idea, basically.
Wow. And this is interesting because I think a lot of us, we find ourselves in a position where you put whatever, whether it's your product, you put it in a box, or be it, the way that you want people to view you, or the way that, you do business and things like that.
Yeah.
And maybe that flexibility that you're talking about now, the ability to adapt and adjust,
Hmm.
Yeah.
so that you are not bent out of shape, excuse the pun, but that is something that a lot of us have struggled with, especially when you start a startup, or you start a company or a business, and you start to realize that maybe it's not going as great as you want it to, and we just stick to it because we feel that we'll be bent out of shape,
Yeah.
but let's maybe, Ken, let's start with you. You have a number of businesses that you've spoken about, and I also understand that you are also in, a finance professional. How did you make the decision, or how do you make the decision to go into business and to start a specific business?
I'm losing you a little bit there. If you can come again, I didn't quite hear that.
Yes. Okay, I was saying, how do you make the decision to go into a specific business?
So essentially, for me, what's been happening is that I look for a situation where there's need for a solution. And when you get a solution, find a need, find a solution, and if the end result results in food on your table, shelter over your head, and clothes behind your back, that's a good solution. Uh, this reminds me of a conversation that I had with my wife some time back. I had just completed I was a master of ceremony at a wedding. And I asked my wife, so how did it go? My wife said, it was great. But I want to tell you something. The difference between a professional and an amateur is simple. Amateurs do it for free, professionals get paid. That's the conversation that triggered everything, right? Uh, that's when everything started for me. And I was looking for an opportunity, finding that there's a financial reward at the end. And also in the process, trying to assist wherever I can.
And that's an
Yeah.
interesting one, and I'm not sure of, you know, amateurs do it for free and professionals do it for money.
Yeah.
I I I think the point I take from that is, at the end of the day, and it's just kind of a lot of the tech businesses have fallen foul of this. Like at the end of the day, if it is a business, it needs to be generating revenue and ultimately become something that can make an income. A lot of stuff, it's nice to build and you do things, but the North Star that, we find ourselves coming back to, again and again is, right, this is great, but fundamentally, like, the point of this business is to turn revenue and to turn a profit. And as much as we want to go off and do all of these fun things, that is where like the majority of time needs to be focused on making that happen. If you are to have a business that is going to work.
I totally agree with you, Matthew, there. Yeah.
Nadine, is this the kind of process as well you go through when you know identify opportunities and say, I want to start this kind of business? How do you go through that process?
Well, let me tell you this. I was retrenched one time and I was unemployed, literally unemployed. And I had to scrape money together. And what I did was I went to the marketplace and I bought bags, right? And I had this idea and I said, I'll supply you the bag, but just give, what I can do as something different is get your name engraved on it, right? And the only reason why I started that business was so I can put food on my table and keep petrol in my car. You know, realistically, was just to keep myself afloat because I was still going for interviews, and then at the same time, I still needed to eat. You know, so then all of a sudden, my bags blew up. You know, so I had a supplier. I took money from the profit. I didn't even see profit. I only saw profit like 3 months into it. You know, it was literally just survival for me. And from there, I saw necessarily if you give a good service, it does accumulate word of mouth. And sometimes people just want to buy products because of leisure. And how I got into branding was people saw a need to actually give and communicate a message, but they didn't know how. And how I saw it was there was a problem, and I had to go back to myself and ask myself, how do I identify to solve the problem, and what service do I want to provide for the need, and how do I want to do it? For example, for brand management, branding is perceived in the market. The brand is perceived in the market. And I had to first ask myself, Nadine, how are you positioned in people's lives? So from branding, it doesn't even go from the product. It doesn't even go from the service. People actually just use your service because of the brand that you are as a person. And I started branding myself as the product first. And that's how people bought into the word of mouth of the service that I'm providing. You know, so I think the branding, yeah.
And I think the development of like a personal brand, and I mean, I know that can sound kind of not great, but is particularly in entrepreneurship is really very important because when it comes to raising money, like certainly at the early stages, somebody's by and large backing an individual, or when you're trying to like win some first contracts, someone's taking a chance on you. Brand Stanford or brand Nadine or brand Ken or brand Matt. I'm not saying you need to have like a wild Instagram presence, but all of these little facets of like externally available information about yourself and the way you present yourself, etc., all add up to the case for like supporting you. And I think that is, that seems so obvious, but kind of it is something that is essential to anything. As you getting a position on a board one day, getting employed for a job. It's like packaging yourself as something that is employable, investable, backable, trustable.
Yeah.
Nadine
same
said
goes for a product.
Yeah. Nadine said something that's really profound when she said that the kind of service you provide can determine the amount of work that you can get in the future. I'm going to give you an example. In our landscaping business, I would say about 80% of the jobs that we did this season, it's amazing that we haven't been able to actively pick up the phone and call. It's just been a referral after referral, and we've been pretty busy. So I believe the way we carry ourselves, the way we present ourselves, our products and services, how we treat our clients, can result in a whole bunch of referrals. And in the process, we are building a brand and say, okay, now this Kenix World Landscaping, or what have they done? We've got sort of a history. Who have we? We can actually refer people back to people that we've worked with in the past, and they can tell that the kind of job that we are doing, we are trying the best we can to make sure we take care of our clients. So it's important the service and products you provide that you put your heart and soul into it.
And I want just to touch on something here, because as Baobab Chats, effectively what we're doing is looking into what are the challenges that we have as Africans across the globe, in different places where we look at it. How can we come up with solutions to these problems, or at least to get people starting getting involved? There's two main issues that have been raised now that I just want to pick on, because these are a commonality. This is exactly, it was raised last week. And last week, of course, the panel, everyone else who was on the panel was from South Africa, located in different cities within South Africa. But there was agreements on these principles. And I am seeing agreement on the same principles with people that are located in, 4 different continents. So this speaks about the commonality between us. The fact of, like what Nadine said, that the first business, she went into the business because she was jobless. Last week, Onai said the same thing. I was jobless and I needed a job. And this speaks about a lot, because if you look at how many people are unemployed or are jobless, across the board, unemployment is a problem everywhere, and the ability to realize that I have to get myself out of this situation. The government is not going to do it for me. I would love them to do it, or neither is my family or anyone else. But I need to take that initiative. That's where the entrepreneurial, abilities within us need to start coming out. And there's another very important point that was raised. Nadine has said it. All of you guys have said it. That was mentioned by Eve last week about. She said, she runs salons, and she said, my salons, my biggest marketing is my product, is my service. So it's word of mouth. I do people nice hair, and the person goes and tells the other one and tells the other one. That's where all my business comes from. So I'm just saying these are principles I'm picking up that they are so much common, and we need to harness on them, as we go forward. Matt, on the issue of starting a business, how did you make that decision to start employing? How did you go about it, and making that decision?
Well, I guess quite nicely it ties into more or less what you've just said. I was so I moved to the UK to do further education. One of the summer holidays, I was staying at my sister's flat, had no money. I saw a sign in a window for a waiter at a restaurant that was needed, and I was like, "Oh, great! I'll just go and be a waiter for a few weeks of the holiday and make some money. That'll be perfect." And I went down there and said to the manager, "Hey, I saw you were looking for a member of staff. Do you have any? Is that job still available?" And they said, "No, sorry, we filled it." And I was like, "Well, no problem. I'll just find something else." And then, literally spent 2 weeks tramping around London, handing out CVs to bars, looking up on websites, calling in to see if there was anything. And basically, I was just appalled by how inefficient the process was. I was thinking there must be places like this all over the city, and the world, looking for people like me. I'm looking for them. Why are we not able to find each other more easily? Then, anyway, that was the kind of the beginning of a seed to build a platform that would make it super easy for people looking for work to find companies looking for staff in these kind of industries. And then coming out of my MBA, I've been working on the side, and it had been something in my head. Eventually, it got to the point at which I thought, this is potentially a very big idea and a good idea. I can either spend the next 10 years in an office trying to build a career, or I could use that time trying to build a business. And if we can get that to work out, then it'll be a much more fulfilling and potentially profitable way of spending that time. So, jumped in and started, not really knowing what the hell we were doing.
Yeah. And that's interesting. It ties into the same thing again about, the situations we find ourselves in, and we take initiative and something big comes out of it. I've seen a number of people were complaining that my volume was very low. Can I get a thumbs up if the volume is now sorted?
It's good now.
Okay. Thank you guys. So that I was saying, Matt, that was something, an identification of an opportunity that you then took in. But I just, because you are in the software development IT space, and a lot of us, we are interested in saying, I want to start a technology business. And but the issue is, because everyone is saying the world is going technology, but what technology business do I start? Like, everyone is saying develop an app, but like, how
Yeah,
do I
yeah,
start to
yeah.
develop an app? How do I make that decision? How did you go through that? Because even how much does
Yeah.
it cost?
So I want to say two things on this. Firstly, that is a misconception, and I think it's incorrect that like to be an entrepreneur, I need to start a business and needs to be technology and it has to have an app. Particularly when you're talking about Africa and like how does the supply, I was thinking of my mother who runs like a horse riding school. I'd never thought of her as an entrepreneur, and just recently I was like, hang on, this woman built her own business, completely managed it by herself. She was an entrepreneur, like the spalza shop owner, the guy driving a taxi. So the idea that tech is like $1 billion unicorns Uber is misguided, and I think not everybody needs to build that kind of business. But when it comes to building an app, we learned a lot of lessons the hard way. We spent a lot of money, not as much as we could have done, on bad developers. Basically figuring this out. I think the one, I'm not a technical guy. I'm a business guy. My co-founder, who subsequently joined, is technical. But I think for the most part, it's not just as simple as, okay, app, we're going to make an app. It's a degree of insights, and certainly like somebody with relevant expertise who you can turn to, or who can support you in making those kind of decisions and getting that done is essential, because there are lots of agencies out there who will tell you they'll do it all for you in X amount of time and for Y amount of money, and you'll end up wasting a lot of it. So I think I guess coming back to how do you actually do it, I think the most important thing is really to have somebody you trust who knows what they're talking about, who you can turn to as a mentor and as an advisor, preferably as a teammate.
Mm. But do you need to have software development skills though?
It really depends on what you're trying to build. If some things, maybe a lot of things, also don't need an app. Like, we made an app first. That was a mistake. We absolutely didn't need to do that. Like a great web platform would have been better. We subsequently have built both, but I think certainly you get on that's like, app, be in the app store. A lot of businesses don't need that kind of tech. What was the question again?
That was actually, it was just in terms of, do you need the skill or not? Of being a software developer.
The answer is yes, you do. You can't. It's like speaking another language. You're building a product. You need to have the skills to do it. You either need to pay somebody to do it, or you need to be able to do it yourself. You can't just make an app.
Just like that. And then let's get into one of the main focus of the day today, which is diversification. And we'll start with you, Ken, mainly because I know you kind of have a diversified portfolio, and I know that part of your diversification is very intentional, because you in Canada you have got very distinct seasons that you kind of need to balance, and as a result, you find yourself from time to time having to have a portfolio that is balanced so that you can be busy in winter and you can be busy in summer. But can you take us through how you make through, what exactly is diversification within the Kenix world, and how you make it work?
So for me, diversification comes in two forms. It could be the diversification of the companies that I have that I'm currently running, the Kenix World Events, Kenix World Transportation, as well as Kenix World Landscaping. So that's diversification. But what I've done as well, I've intentionally did diversification of the products and services I provide within each category. Like right now, we've been working really hard in our landscaping to ensure that when the season turns into winter where you cannot work outside, then I begin to work inside. I've done a bunch of courses on how to do framing, how to do basements, how to do kitchen cabinets. But for now, we are working on our product for the season. We added this year was raised flower beds, raised gardens. People want something nicer. That's why we've been really a popular product for us. But within the Kenix World Landscaping, so when I originally started, when I had the idea in the beginning, it was just laying grass, which is called sod out here in the West, laying sod and just designing backyards, designing front yards. But we moved, we added some products, tree planting, we added some products, building patios, we added some products, building decks at the back of the house or patios. So that's some of the diversification that we have done, product wise, as well as the lines of business as well. In Kenningsford Transportation, what we have done, it was originally just junk removal. But we decided one time I was having a conversation with somebody else and say, oh, hey, you know what? I need someone to help me to move. The first thing that I said, right, I was like, I can help you move. With Kenningsford Transportation, we can move you from place to place and safely move all your goods or whatever you have in your household. That's how it started. So we added that. Kenningsford events. I've been a master ceremony on a lot of events, but I realized that the people that I'm dealing with also have other things they need to be able to have the event. Instead of just coming and being a master of ceremony, I decided to be part of the entire process. Okay, you have a wedding. What do you need from start to finish? This is what you need. I will guide people throughout the process, right? So that's essentially what we've done, increasing our services and making sure that our clients are happy.
Stan, we don't hear you.
Thank you. I was saying that's interesting because especially with the pandemic, a lot of us, because we are so thin, we get stuck with, the pandemic hits, you can't do what you normally do, but because you're not diversified, you're stuck and there's no business at all.
We, I mean, and this kind of, I wanted to drop this in earlier when we were talking about flexibility and not getting bent out of shape. Employ until the 28th of March or whatever it was a platform. Starting off here, but it's very much our entire business was connecting hospitality workers to hotels, bars, cafes, clubs. Overnight, the revenue, customer accounts, this big pipeline that we've been working on for years to bring online completely evaporated because all of these places shut their doors and we're not hiring anybody. We were very fortunate to have not too long beforehand raised some further capital, so we had cash. We had some cash in the bank, but we spun up an austerity budget, cut costs as much as possible everywhere. Everyone's salaries got cut in half. And then I've had to use that time to say, right, where is there opportunity now? And have developed new lines of business where we're looking at new industries. And to your very first point, very excitingly, now have built the ability for the platform to work in a much bigger geographic area. So we're actually launching into a country in the Southern Hemisphere. I won't say which one just yet, this month. And hopefully, if that works out as a small test, then South Africa, it's the same model that we'll be able to use for new things. We wouldn't have pushed ourselves to do that had this thing not rolled around. And necessity is the mother of invention. You figure it, you either hit the wall, you spin up a plan.
Wow, that's interesting because really, another point I wanted to touch on. I know Ken maybe didn't go into that detail, but the seasonalness of Canada, and that applies to even different types of businesses. Where because you've got very cold winters, and in winter you're not really doing your landscaping, you focus on snow plowing and all those things, but then when it comes summer, then you're doing the gardens and stuff like that. That balance is one that a lot of us don't get. I know people who are in certain businesses where they tell you that, oh, my business dies in winter. But the ability to identify how can I pivot on what I have in the time being, and use it during that period is one that a lot of people struggle with. And like what you said, Matt, with in terms of people who are into events or hospitality industry, like it have just gone dead overnight. And it's having that. We'll come back to Nadine. A flexible person is never bent out of shape. So if you're flexible, you find a way to make it work. Nadine.
I just want to add something about diversification. Diversification, I believe personally, is not separate from collaboration. For example, with branding, there's a phrase that we use that's called brand equity. I know Matt mentioned Instagram followers, right? So, brand equity is basically explained your perceived worth, right? Is it worth investing in you, for example? So, if I have 120K followers versus 1,000 followers, sorry to say, people actually categorize you like you are really up there or you are really low. Like you don't have as many followers. So I think the brand equity also goes along with diversity, where, for example, the worth of the person and the person I collaborate with helps me to diverse. Um, so, for example, if I collaborate with someone else, they might help me with my brand equity. People might perceive me as a four. And then just by my collaboration, they'll perceive me with an eight. So that's also important about diversification, where you can actually keep your 9 to 5 job. And then after work, which you learn how to work under a boss, and what you can learn from a boss is the weaknesses and strength, and actually bring that into your side hustle per se, and say, this is what I want to put into my business, this is what I don't want to put into my business, this is what I want to include with my team, this is what I don't want to include from my team. So I think the perception of diversity also shouldn't get contaminated with looking confused, because people also invest in your brand equity, but if you look confused, they're rather skeptical to invest. So what goes alongside diversification is collaboration, which helps with your brand equity, or diversification with investment and not looking confused. So that is what is important when it comes to you as a brand. Like
Wow.
Matt said earlier, you can pay someone. If you're not, like, I know I didn't have the time to counsel you, right? I know that's a skill. I didn't have that patience. I'm straight up. I get to the point. This looks bad. Yes, it looks bad. Then I will get someone else. I will probably employ someone to say, please, can you politely tell this client that they can work on this? Work on this. Just be nice. I'm the person that said, no, it looks ugly. We need to work on this. So I think that's also an aspect where we as managers and CEOs need to realize our weaknesses and say, fine, I don't know how to do IT, but I'll get someone that knows how to do it, and
Yeah.
collaborate or invest in someone that can help you, you know.
That can assist with that. We actually want to dive into at branding more, but Ken, there's a specific question that someone asked on social media,
Uh-huh.
where they're saying, "How are you handling all that diversification? Don't you ever find that overwhelming?" And I want to come into what also then Nadine kind of touched on, that don't you end up looking confused? How do you manage to make sure that you don't look confused and like all over the show as well?
All right. I guess you and I kind of in sync because what you're thinking is exactly what I was thinking. That I need to respond directly to the question that was asked by Martha Fox. Let me acknowledge that she's watching out of Calgary, a great sister, business lady who works so hard. The overwhelming part, uh, the way to deal with the overwhelming part is to be able to plan. Essentially, what happens is that I don't plan this current week. This week, whatever that I'm supposed to do this week, I planned it maybe a week or week ago to ensure that at least I can focus and see out of the 24 hours in a day, the 7 days in a week, where can I place this particular job or thing that I have to do event. And I'm also truly blessed to be working with a great team of people that are really supportive. Let me just acknowledge my wife who continuously give me the power and strength every single day to be able to work hard, and she helps me. I believe in prayer. She prays for me to have clarity. Clarity is very important, especially when you are in business. And so I plan a lot and I work with great people. Yes, there could be a day or two that is overwhelming. But if you start getting overwhelmed every day, which tells me there's a problem, you need to plan a little bit better. Right now, if you ask me, what am I doing on Monday next week? I can tell you exactly what I'm doing because I've already memorized it. I know what my calendar looks like. We have a really busy week next week, but I know what I'm doing which day. So planning is a very, very, very important piece of when you're diversifying, because if you don't plan, you get confused. And as an owner of the company, you should not always be confused all the time. You should have clarity.
Wow, that's great. And I actually would want to mention something there about about planning. So as I was going through my career, there was a time, as you develop, where I was getting more responsibilities at work, and I felt at some point that it was becoming overwhelming. Right? This is not about business, but just work in my profession. And so I went to my mentor and I asked him to say, I'm struggling. I can't manage my time. He said to me, how many how many subjects did you do at high school? Okay, 8 subjects. Then he said, how did you manage to handle them? I said, we used to have timetables and everything. Then he said, yeah, that was planning that you were being taught at that time. So you need to have a timetable now. But a lot of us, as we grow older, we lose those simple principles. Have a timetable. We called it a timetable, then you can call it a diary, you can call it a plan, but the bottom line is that it's just a timetable. So, well, it just opened my eyes. I'm like, okay, why did I never think of it that way? But let's go and engage on branding a bit more, right? Nadine, you're a branding specialist, and whenever you speak, you speak brand. You speak brand. What? Let's talk about, because most of us, we are running. Of course, others are running bigger businesses, but can you talk about a personal brand and how it's different from your business brand, and then how we should merge those two together?
Okay, so for me, I'll give you some of my background in radio. So I started in radio as a news compiler. I literally got up on Saturday mornings just compiling bulletins. No free, no money paid. It was all done at 5 in the morning for free, right? And from that, one day, someone asked me, actually the news reader asked me, Nadine, can you give your opinion on air? And that was the first time I spoke on radio, right? And that was me developing into a different brand. Then I got training from Eddie Goldberg, who's the best voiceover artist in South Africa. And he said, Nadine, you're only as good as the last bulletin that you read. And you're only as good as the last radio show you did. So that means you're only as good as the last highlighter someone got from you. You're only as good as your corporate identity. For example, so corporate identity is basically the corporate image or the firm of your business, right? As a presentation of yourself, whether it's a trademark, whether it's a design, whether it's an advert, whether it's your PR, whether it's your messaging. So, for example, with branding, let's use McDonald's. Okay, universally, globally, it's one message. McDonald's, I'm loving it. Done. So if they don't give you the sensation of loving the hamburger or the chips and whatever, they haven't fulfilled that message. So within branding, it's basically your ethos is fulfilling that message in the position of your client's or customer's mind.
Wow, that's quite a mouthful. Matt, your understanding of the branding and to engage with what Nadine is saying.
Yeah, I mean, let me think about this in the context of fundraising, perhaps, because I know that's something you were thinking about. But
Yeah.
I think this goes for everything, which ties in to what Nadine was saying is narrative. It is, branding is very tied together with the narrative of, the story that you tell, the story about yourself, the story about your business, and how you get that across to people. When you're raising money, it's right at the bat, it's the story of this is the vision, this is what we're going to do. Then you need to, this is why, this is an opportunity, and that's okay. That's one thing, but part two of that is, and this is why I or we or this team are the people who are going to be capable of doing that, because we're credible, we are trustworthy, we are competent. That's all branding. That's all narrative. then as that journey goes along, obviously one is evaluated against those things. I can say I'm an incredible actor. It'll take you a few times. It'll only take me 1 or 2 times getting on the stage and acting for you to be like, that's I call BS. That he's not a great actor. You are then tried against your performance of what you've said, or same goes for Ken and the business. You can say you're a great landscape designer when you come and kill the lawn. That product it's about the delivery of the service, the product. And then coming down further, looking to raise money again, it's right. How do we tell the story? Or for the next business, how do we say it's the same business? How do we tell the story of, right? This is what we said we would do between here and here. This didn't go quite so well. This went very well. Crafting kind of a narrative that says there has been progress and this is backable. Or if you fail, it's not like I have a failed business. I'm a failed entrepreneur. It's the next business that I'm coming to you for is going to be even better because of this is what I learned from that failure, and these are the things I went to again. Suddenly, you've spun it completely around, and the fact that you've had that makes you even more investable, more backable. And I think that and brand are one and the same. Is the narrative and how they support each other.
Yeah, I like this the analogy you gave as well at the beginning. This is one of the areas where we have problem with a lot of us young and up and coming entrepreneurs, African business people, where at times our talk and our product or service don't tie up. So we go out there, we find a graphic designer that designs very beautiful flyers, a great logo and everything. But when it comes to offering the service, it's really at times so bad. So that comes to, I'm just coming to what you were saying, Matt, of you can only say I'm good at this so many times before people just see that you don't know what you're doing. Where you can it applies even in the professional world, where you get into an interview, you impress everyone, you've got a good brand, you can speak for yourself, but when it comes to delivering, it doesn't go so great. Ken, can you just give us, do you have any comments about the branding? We want to jump into funding now, but if you have something to say about the branding.
Yep. And I just want to acknowledge something that Matt said. He says the falling, it's not about the falling, but how many times you get up, right? Sometimes you face some challenges in a business, but if it fails, you just keep trying. Try a different solution. So for me, branding is something as simple as, how do I carry myself? How do I have a conversation? Do I have a good standing? Who am I? Who do I want to be? Do I have that track record that when it speaks for me? How do I relate with my customers? Am I providing a good service? That's branding to me. But also I could look at branding from a different angle where I say, now I'm looking for name recognition, or my vehicles for landscaping. I'm going to put a full name and everything that is colorful, that is nice, and get that name recognition moving from one community to another. Because at the end of the day, our business, as somebody mentioned, that the word of mouth, the work that we have done, our history kind of carries us to the next level, right? So how we carry ourselves, where we are, where we want to be, and how honest we are. Something as simple as, if I tell a client I'm showing up at 8 o'clock and I show up at 9 o'clock, I'm no longer good for my word. If I tell a client I'm coming at 8, I'm showing up at 7:45 because I want to be a man of my word. That's branding to me. I will be known as a guy who makes it on time.
Yeah, and I'm proud to say on the time factor, we have struggled with this as Baobab Chats, but I'm happy to say, as part of the branding, when we have the planning meetings and everything, and people who have been on the panel have seen that the time aspect, where we say we go online at such a time, and we all the time try and make sure that you satisfy that. It's part of building, your brand and how people know you and how people, experience what you do. But we'll start with you, Matt. Last week, capital and funding was a hot issue. And I know you've done quite a lot of funding rounds. especially with employ, and you have raised substantial amounts of money. Um, where do you start? How do you pitch, to get funding? Let's look at a small business level and at a level of, when you are expanding the business where you are now going out to get real investors in.
Yeah. So I think the point of departure is, how much money do you need? Again, coming back to, not every company is a tech unicorn. A lot of companies don't need millions of pounds or dollars or rands to get off the ground. They just need 10, 5. You always hear there are plenty of stories of companies that have started, huge companies that started off just like with no external investment at all, or step 2, probably ideal, is to bootstrap, where you don't raise at all. You build a business more gradually, utilizing the revenues and the money that you make.
So Matt, I've heard that term so many times, and I've always Googled it, and I know a lot of people that bootstrapping, because you even hear people when they say we're bootstrapping, and you're asking yourself, can you explain bootstrapping?
This is when I can't, and it's embarrassing. So I mean, bootstrapping, right? Is you take the example of, we start with, we're going to sell honey on the side of the street, and you take your 100 rand and you go and get some honey and you sell it for a 20 rand profit, and then the next time you start with a bit more. Bootstrap is using a business to self-fund itself. You use the revenues and the profits to reinvest. Next thing, you're offering honey and jam. You never need to raise external capital, which is great as a shareholder, as a founder, because you then own the whole business. Typically it would probably may take less time, take a bit longer to grow, but you own all of the equity, and it's basically a self-funded business.
Okay, yeah. So you can continue with the rest. My apologies for cutting you there. I just found it, these tech companies, because these terms are usually, tech companies have an issue of, exponential growth, scalability. There's all these terms that are always used, and everyone else tries to find out how do they fit, into those terms. So that's what I was just trying to do there. But yeah, you can finish your line of thought.
So the line of thought was not everybody needs to raise loads of money. If you do, or if you need to raise some money, it comes back to narrative and story and branding. But the story, the narrative. One is, and I think this is when I advise people, I'm kind of astounded by people who get it right, and some who just get it horribly wrong. Is there is, certainly for most companies now, there is a kind of established formula for how you get the information across. Like, this is a pitch deck, basically. And we didn't do this right the first time. We built a 40-page business plan. If somebody sent me that now, I would be astounded. But I sometimes do. So I outline what you need. There's plenty of resources available online. Get it across succinctly. This is the company. This is the problem that we're trying to solve. This is how we're going to do it. This is why we're better than the competition. This is how we're going to get customers. This is what we need money for, and this is how much we need. This is where it's going to go. This is where we expect this to get us to. And there are variations on that, but the basic formula is pretty well established now. And when you're pitching investors, they see a bunch of these things to get them. I'm not saying don't do something that is more interesting and more like wow, but certainly don't do something that is completely out of line with that, because you're competing for limited amounts of time. And then I think too, on the narrative point, when we raised our first money, we drew up a long list of basically everybody we knew who had some money, or we thought might know people with money, or who might be able to invest. Put them on basically a newsletter. Started kind of 6 months before we knew we were going to need cash, and said, "Hey, this is Matt. This is Alex. We're working on this interesting project. Employer. This is why we think it's a good idea. Let me know if you want to be taken off, but otherwise, we're just going to keep you updated with the progress." You start to drop breadcrumbs all along the way. This is going really well. Wow, we had this great piece of feedback. This was an insight we just had. Then fast forward 6 months. Okay, we've now convinced ourselves that there is a big enough opportunity here. But to build this product and to go further than the MVP or the initial test we're doing, we need to raise capital to do this. Suddenly, you're not just like hitting people, hey, we want money. It's brought them along on a journey, which has kind of brought them into the fold and into the progress. And we found that then it was much easier to get that first check. Then from there comes back to what I said earlier is, right, you've said you're going to do something. How do you perform against that? And how do you tell the story about the successes and the failures that you have in a way that is thrusting in the direction of, there's still something how these guys are making progress, we should back it.
Yeah. And you just said something that I've never thought of in the business sense. The one of throwing the feelers and take people along, and then when you now need to raise the money, then you tell them that now we need the money, because we always apply that in our personal lives where I need to ask Ken for $100. I greet him 3 days before, then I greet him the second day, and then the third day I say, yeah, Ken, by the way, can you help me with $100? But when it comes to business, I've never thought of it that sense. When it comes to raising funding or capital for a business, to say you can also follow, it's the same principle. It needs to be followed as well. Yeah, Ken.
No, I was just gonna just add a little bit to what Matt said. Bootstrapping, essentially using your resources within your business to be able to go forward. Depending with where you are. When I started the landscaping business, all I needed was a trimmer and a lawnmower, and I had a little bit of savings on the side. That's what I started with. But if you look at the amount of tools that I have right now, if I'm to decide to sell them, I could get a good chunk of change, right? But so the idea is that whatever receipts you're getting in your business, you are not spending all that, right? You are leaving some on the side in case there's a new tool that needs to be replaced. There's a new tool that you need. The traditional way would be go to your bank, right? Some people have access to, say, a home equity line of credit, depending with what amount of money you need, right? Because when you start up a business, the banks never really want to touch you because you don't have a history, right? It's hard for you to get to borrow money from the bank in the beginning, but as you build, as they see receipts, you can begin to start having conversation. And it's very important that you document all the revenues you're receiving, or how you're receiving and how consistent it is. That way, in the future, if you require any funding from the bank, you can go back and say, look at my track record, look at my financials. These are my invoices, these are my clients, these are my accounts receivables. So you have to have a track record in order for you to get funding in the future, should you want to grow your business. But some may decide and say, you know what, I don't want to grow my business too much. I will continue to use the resources within the business. Right.
Wow. That's quite great. Yeah, Nadine?
From my side, I honestly didn't get the luxury of financial investments. Look, I'm still young. Like, I'm still making this thing happen. But I'm a born again Christian, and in Proverbs 3 verse 5, it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding, but acknowledge Him in all your ways, and He will direct your path." And that's very important. Where I believe that God can't direct your path if you're not moving. And first of all, there's no compass into what direction you need to move, or how do you need to move it. For me, I was working a 9 to 5, but I knew I wanted my own business. So what I did in my micro space was that in my own budget, I said, what are my needs and what are my wants? Okay. And I literally just sorted my needs and then kept my wants aside and took the extra money and I invested in registering my business name. Those are the practical steps that I did. And the business that I have now, I run it like I'm already a CEO in a huge business company. So if you want me to do a job for 200 rand, for example, I invoice you like I would invoice someone that's actually do a 1,000,000 rand job. So it's basically I treat you like the same level. Even if it's a 1 rand, I still treat you like it's a 1,000,000 rand. For example, we can literally, for now, some of my friends are selling face masks in COVID-19, and they're just putting your name on it. That's in their resources. That's in their home. Some of my friends are selling sanitizer, which is a need, and they're providing a good service. You know, so I think the idea of your big vision is liable, but also knowing what you have as a want and what you have as a need in your resources at this stage, you can make that
Wow.
practical. And what's scary
Wow.
is starting point. You always have these doubts. You always have these doubts about, am I um, inadequate to do the job? I don't know how to do the job. Sometimes I don't know how to do certain things to the clients. If they ask me, I'll be like, sir, I'll get back to you in a few days. It doesn't mean I
Wow.
can't do it. I would ask someone that has the expertise to do it. There's Google, there's YouTube. And if someone else can do it, I can do it. You know, that is
Wow.
what is important. If you have a good skill and you're going it to waste, you're sleeping on yourself. So, for example, I knew I had the intellectual property. And so, what I do is I let someone pay for my intellectual property. For example, you go to the doctor and you pay for consultation. You're paying practically for him to diagnose your problem. So, that's what
Yeah.
I'm doing. I'm diagnosing your problem and I'm giving you the price for that. So that's for
Wow.
the person that wants to cut hair. That's a skill. Have 8 heads to cut a day. Plan like
Yeah.
Ken,
And
plan.
I think and what you're saying also ties into what Ken's wife, whom I know, she's a very beautiful soul, saying to Ken, you know, an amateur does it for free. A business person or a professional does it and they get paid for it. So this is, but we must not forget the spirit of Ubuntu. That as Africans we are still out there to help ourselves and help each other. Um,
Yeah.
this has been great, guys, and what I would just give each of you 30 seconds to give a parting shot, and to give a message to fellow Africans out there, in terms of those who are in this entrepreneurship journey. We'll start with you, with you, Matt.
Sure. I just thanks so much, Stan, for the opportunity to talk. It's been really great to have this conversation. And I think what you're doing with Blowbab Chats is super awesome and very important. I would echo what you more or less what you've just said in pay it forward as Africans. We're out there, some of us on the continent, some of us abroad, but doing our thing. And I would say never don't underestimate people's willingness to help. Reach out to me or to anyone else. I found mentors, etc., have been super helpful and very willing. If you're the guy putting your neck on the line to try and do something, people are prepared to help you. Flip side of that is do what you can to help other people who are still out there hustling. Yeah, good luck.
Wow, that's great, Nadine.
From my side, I just want to say that don't sleep on yourself because you're worth every 24 hours in your life. The second thing I want to say is please remain teachable because if you remain teachable, there's always room to grow and learn, And if you fail, make sure you fail forward and you can do it, man.
Wow, Ken.
Let me just say, you have a business idea. You've been thinking about it. You've been sitting on it, and you want to do it. Do not delay any further. You can start right now today and say you want to start your business. Let me speak directly to a young fella that I've been trying to mentor out of BC. His name is Ishe. Wherever you are, I want to say that you're more than able and capable. Do not be discouraged. You're able. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me. I want you to be successful. That's what I want. And everybody else doing business out there, give up, work on it, look for new contacts, network, speak to people. Don't sit in your basement.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much, guys. For reaching out and spending time. This has been great. And to fellow Africans out there, you have heard the guys. We are here to help each other. We are here to grow. The continent. We grow the continent in various ways. Even though we might not be in the continent, I was listening to a speech last week about how much remittances go to Africa from people outside of the continent. So although people might not be based in the continent, but they contribute to the GDP and growth of the continent. And thank you so much for taking the time. This was great. And I hope you guys will be available to come again. And to those who are following on social media for the comments, shout out to all of you. And thank you. And have a great evening forward, or morning, or day. Cheers, everyone.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
guys.